After a fairly long session of being taught how to use the pistol, about safety measures, control, aiming, breath control when shooting, and after it seemed that Kontiki had gotten a firm grasp of it, now able to hit targets at a fair distance, and seeming fairly accurate, Edward passed along one of the 3 pistols that he carried with him to his adoptive son, Kontiki. As many individuals carried weapons and swords. However, having a quality sword required money that Kontiki's parents did not possess. But no one had pistols, so this would give Kontiki some measure of defense, other than the small knife that he carried with him. Okay, remember, kid, don't blow your foot off. And the fact that nobody knows what a pistol is only works to your advantage. Don't go blathering to everybody and bragging about how you have a pistol. What a pistol does. It'll just paint a target on your back. It's much better for you, and the pistol is much more effective when nobody knows what the hell it does. So keep your trap shut. Use it. Don't talk about it. So, I've got some busy work around the house to do for a while, Edward said as he rubbed the back of his neck. Your mom's running me ragged, and I still have to head out after this. Earn some money, but it shouldn't take me more than a few weeks before I'm back. But we should be able to eat dinner before I have to leave. So, why don't you go and catch us some fish while I'm finishing up here? Yeah, no problem, Kontiki replied with a smile, placing his hands on his hips and looking up at him proudly, the gun now lashed to his side. Kontiki felt more manly all of a sudden. Hey, don't start striking poses just yet, kid. You're a far shot from being a man. You're a man in training. And right now, your training is to catch fish. So I don't have to catch fish. Fine, Kontiki replied, breaking away from his smile. Remember, don't get that thing wet. It doesn't fire if it gets wet. Wet powder is useless powder. Remember it. It's a good lesson. Yeah, I got it, Kontiki said as he journeyed away, making his way towards the river, where he would try to catch some fish for dinner. Kontiki made his way towards the river, where he spent some time fishing. It was a process that he was more than used to, finding an appropriate sized stick, and then sharpening the point with the knife that he carried along with him. It took him a while to collect enough fish that he thought it would be enough for everyone in the home to eat. His father had a fairly big appetite, but luckily, this time of year, there were plenty of fish to be had. And after catching about 6 of them, Kontiki felt that it would be a sufficient enough meal, along with whatever else his mother was going to prepare. As he gathered the fish that he had collected on a string, tying a knot tightly so he could carry them along with him, he felt a voice whisper to him. Be ready, Kontiki, the voice said as he looked over his shoulder to see his shadowy mother there. She had never spoken to him in the day before. It actually startled him a bit. Be ready for what? Remember, Kontiki, if you don't find them, they will find you. You must become yourself. That way, we can be together, she whispered, as Kontiki still didn't clearly understand what she meant. What am I even doing? Just ignore her, Kontiki thought to himself as he hoisted the fish up and began making his way towards home. As Kontiki made the journey back to his home, he suddenly began to feel something, like a secondary awareness that something important was nearby. He could even tell a direction. Based on that, It felt as if it was coming from his home, or the direction of it. As he began to focus on the feeling, he could even surmise a distance. It felt like it was coming from around where his home would be. "What is that?" Kantaki said to himself, as his pace began to quicken, wondering exactly what this feeling was about, and how he was suddenly beginning to experience dread. The closer he grew to his home, the more he began to feel a sinister ambition, a willingness to do whatever it takes, a desire to claim something. None of them coming from him. They seemed to stem from the direction he was moving in, from his home. What's going on? What is that? Kantaki said to himself, as with every passing moment his pace quickened, moving in that direction faster and faster, eventually finding himself running, closing in on his home. And as he did, Kantaki was greeted with a horrifying sight. There, lying on the ground, outside of his home, nearby, an axe crammed into a stump, where it looked as if his father was chopping wood. There his father lay, still in the dirt, his clothes in the ground stained with blood, his body lying motionless. "Dad?" Kantaki exclaimed, as he dropped the fish he was holding, rushing over, beginning to try to check to see if maybe he was still alive, shaking him. "Dad! Dad!" he exclaimed loudly, shaking him harder and harder. But there was no movement as he looked down at his father's face to find an expressionless face. His eyes were open, but he wasn't blinking. No breath came from his mouth. His chest did not rise and fall as that of a man who still had life. As Kantaki raised his hands to find blood staining them. "Mom," he said as he began to look towards his home, about to stand up and rush in that direction to see if his mother could do anything, as he saw the door to his home open, his mother taking steps out, blood running down her shirt, clasping at her throat, as blood seemed to gush from it, looking at him with a shocked, frightful expression as she stumbled away from the doorway, staring at him with a look that he couldn't comprehend. What was it? Panic for certain, but there was something else. Confusion, fear, as she slumped down to her knees, her eyes beginning to go dull as her body slothed to the ground, impacting the dirt hard. And behind her, a figure, standing in the doorway, began to step out behind her. "People are so nice," the figure said, in a very familiar voice. It sounded like Kantaki's voice. And surely enough, as Kantaki looked in that direction, he found that the person standing there was him, holding a sharp knife, smiling brightly, a friendly expression, as his clothes were stained with blood, as was the knife in his grasp. Kantaki looked on it with horror. What did you do? Why?" Kantaki exclaimed as he stared at this doppelganger, this duplicate of himself, smiling warmly after killing his family. "You know, people are just so generous when they think they know who you are. I'd say that's the one advantage to having so many people with your face, is you can always find yourself. And when people think they know who you are, they welcome you right in, tell you anything you want to know. The nice people in town were more than willing to help tell me exactly where I lived. When I showed up, your parents, of course, thought I was you. They didn't question it at all. And maybe where my clothes had come from, as they weren't the ones that they saw me leave with. But, like with most people, any excuse really works. To be honest, the face does most of the work for me, even if it's a bad lie. With this face, they just buy it. They welcome the cuckoo right into the nest. So, really, I can't complain, the doppelganger Kontiki said, still smiling, seeming cheerful, as Kontiki grit his teeth, staring at him furiously, clenching his jaw so tightly it felt like his teeth might break, as he reached to his side, grabbing the pistol, pulling it out and aiming it at this doppelganger Kontiki. What the hell is that? What, you gonna throw your stick at me? It won't do you any good. And once I kill you, I'll have another piece. I'll be that much closer. Go to hell, Kontiki said, as he aimed carefully. One shot. He only has one shot. He took his time as the doppelganger Kontiki began to step in his direction. You know, really, you should be running. You don't look like much of a fighter. I suppose it's not much different from the other ones, the doppelganger Kontiki exclaimed as he continued to step in his direction. For your information, this isn't a stick. It's called a pistol. A pistol? What does a pistol do? This, Kontiki exclaimed as he squeezed the trigger. A loud crack fires off as smoke propels from the barrel. The ball of steel hurtles out, propelling itself through the head of the doppelganger Kontiki. A flash of red flies through his person, splattering out of the other side as the doppelganger Kontiki falls to the ground, unmoving, blood draining away, as in the moment, as Kontiki held the pistol, still emanating smoke, still gritting his teeth, looking at him furious, as if killing him a single time wasn't enough to subside the hatred. He began to see a world of bright, colorful light and energy swirl off of the now dead doppelganger Kontiki, rushing towards him as it seemed to waft, absorbing into his form, swirling around his body, sinking into it, a feeling of warmth. And just like that, you have collected his pieces, Kontiki heard from nearby as he looked over to see his shadowy mother standing next to him. Collect them all, Kontiki, and you can become the true Kontiki, the Kontiki you were meant to be, a true and complete Kontiki, she said, smiling down to